Now, we all want to feel good, and we don't want to feel bad, right? We want to feel sustainably better. We want to avoid chronic and particularly unnecessary pain. And so we try things, and they succeed or they fail based on those goals. And in order to help us to correct, meaning when we do something and we get rejected, and then we feel humiliated because we were rejected, and then we start eating, to stuff down our humiliation, and then we feel disgust because we ate, and then we feel even more humiliated. And we say something, never again, like I don't want to feel that way again. And so we then try and course correct. Like I'm never going to invite that type of person ever again, right? I don't care, like who cares about them, etc. So we course correct with this type of attitude, and we try and make a rule, a guideline that says we will do this, we won't do that. And so we create that law in our mind. Now, at a larger macro level, right, some little girl dies because a liquor store sold alcohol to a 15-year-old. If the liquor store had not sold the alcohol to the 15-year-old, the 15-year-old would not, the theory is that the 15-year-old wouldn't have gotten the alcohol. Right? Of course, in a culture where you can just give $20 to, a third of the population and they'll go get it for you, it's a little shaky supposition, but nonetheless, that's the theory. And so parents lose their daughter to a drunk driver, 15-year-old, who was driving underage without his license, plus was drunk, right? But there's not much that they can think to solve that problem with the DMV, right? But they think maybe if they could penalize liquor stores for selling to underage higher, then they wouldn't do that, and then their daughter would still be alive. And then, so they begin this campaign, right? And, who doesn't want their daughter to be alive? Who doesn't want liquor stores to be able to, discern age? And so there's maybe a 5 or 10 year campaign, and then finally they're able to pass a law that says, any liquor store that does this will be fined $10,000, right? And so the amount of carding goes up, but then of course fake ID, there becomes a new market for fake ID. But now there's this protocol that says we always have to ask how old and look at the ID. And so then, all the people that are committed to drinking underage have to buy fake IDs, right? Then there's a criminal black market that develops there because it's illegal to sell fake IDs. So then a certain number of those people end up in jail for selling fake IDs. And so the system of laws gets bigger, right? Because I'm never gonna, I'm a loser. I'm never gonna ask a really attractive person out on a date again. I'm just not going to do it. It felt so horrible. Look at how it ended. I didn't get the date. Plus, I ended up, feeling humiliated, and then humiliated at what I did to manage the feelings because I don't know how to deal with humiliation, which is absolutely terrible. Right? I'm not going to deal with that again. But that's just one law on one day, right? And the United States used to be right? The home of the brave, the land of the free. But we've been passing laws, often, several laws a day across the country, since the day that we were born, right? And then we have to hire managers to manage all those different laws. And the amount of energy that is spent in that goal of creating sustainable well-being and avoiding chronic and unnecessary suffering increases year over year until it becomes a tax on, in order to create anything, you now have to navigate a maze of laws. And that's the state that we are in as individuals. Like by the time we're 40 years old, we've got the, don't eat this, don't drink that before 3, don't have, 2 drinks, go do to the gym this, study, get ahead, save your money here, put your money there. And there's less and less living, there's less and less being, there's less and less enjoyment of life, and there's more and more, oh, I can't do that because then they'll think that's racist, and then I can't do this because then they'll think that I'm a creep, and then I can't do this. And there's just the human energy, the impulse to seek, to create, to be, right? To go and enjoy the moment with alone or with some, but no, the park is closed. You can't enjoy the moment. Why? Well, sometimes gangs gather in the park after dark, so nobody can go in the park after dark. Well, how many gangs, and do you think they're really the type that are going to listen to this law? Well, it's the best we can do, so nobody gets to go to the park after sunset. Right? So suddenly you can't park your car on the side of the road. You can't loiter, right? You can't go to the park, right? You can't, if you're employing an attractive person that you're attracted to, you can't ask them on a date. That's abuse. You can't dress like this. You can't dress like that. You have to dress like this, right? You can't. And the rule book gets thicker and more contradictory, right? We have to come in Wednesday and Saturday to do this, but they're on vacation and it's not Wednesday and Saturday. And you need to get their approval before you can do this, and you have to get this in 24 hours. But you can't get it in 24 hours because they're on vacation and it's not Wednesday and Saturday. And so we see this in government, right? Schizophrenic government shuffling its citizens from department to department, trying to get basic things done, like build a house. And there's this disconnect, right? And it becomes depressing. Anyone trying to deal with government gets depressed quite easily if they have that tendency, because the amount of waste, the amount of stupidity, the amount of mindless repetition. You do this because that's the way it's done, right? But it's inconvenient. It's absurd. It's out of proportion. Well, just do it, or don't have a house, right? So, this is very easy to see. I mean, as a business owner, you and I have watched for years the fact that government has never benefited our clients. It hasn't benefited our clients. It hasn't benefited us. It hasn't benefited anyone, right? Every time local or whatever government gets involved, things get worse and more expensive at the same time. And it's hard to, well, who benefited, right? Because we're already trying to do the right thing for the neighbors and the homeowners to begin with, right? So usually it's a code that's supposedly trying to help the abstract neighbors, but we're trying to help the real neighbors, right? So there's this shaky dynamic, right? So we're no longer the home of the free, we're the home of the depressed, and we're not the home of the brave, we're the home of the bureaucrats. And the bureaucrats are not, it's there's an increasing tax to all of these laws and guidelines to stop bad things from happening. So we become depressed and controlled as individuals and as a culture and as a country. Now, there's no clear protocol for undoing these laws, for saying, okay, when I would have committed suicide because someone rejected me, not asking them out on a date was a good rule, right? Because got to get through and not commit suicide. But now if they say yes, there's a benefit. If they say no, it's no big deal. But I've still got that rule in the back of my head. And so countries and individuals, cultures, form rules that become an incredibly high tax over time. And we don't demand that we undo a rule as we create a new one. But that, I think, would be a good rule, that every time we're going to develop a new protocol, like we're always going to do it this way and we're not going to do it that way, like that's a rule, individually or as a country. If we have another rule, like, because the same can be with a routine, like I'm going to start doing this, every day I'm going to do this. Well, then you have to take something else out of your routine so that you don't just become a routine. You don't just become enslaved. And similarly, as a country, right, it's probably a pretty good thing that if you pass a law, you have to delete another law or rewrite it. So that, because as an individual and as a country and as a culture, we are in the state, I am in the state, where the rules are creating more harm than benefit. Right? There's value in rules in creating a certain sense of order, right? In reducing the overwhelms. But we're at a point where if there's more than perhaps 20% rules, because that's a 20% tax on all energy, right? It's got to flow within those 20% rules, right? So that's saying, okay, we'll tax energy 20% in order to have order, to avoid overwhelm and chaos and have some order. 20% of our day, of our life, of our reality will be taxed, or 10%, whatever the ratio is. 10% is a much more exciting life. You have to do this 10% thing and then you can do whatever you want the rest of the time. That's an exciting life. And so, that's just something that's that I'm reflecting on this morning, is that the number of rules on my thoughts, on my feelings, on my words, on my goal, the number of rules, and nationally and personally, are depressing. And the cost of doing all those things in all those ways is probably worse, not necessarily, but in aggregate, it's probably worse than having no rules. Or maybe it's not. It's certainly worse than having a lot less rules. It has tipped. But having fewer rules, de-ruling, I think is a really good direction. And it's not built in, because every time a rule creates a big problem for people, which is all the time, people don't make it their mission to undo the rule. Right? But when there's a fatality, a loss, or whatever, partly because we don't teach the art of grieving well, right? We try and make someone matter by making everyone in the world for all time do this one thing so that could never happen again.